Here's a potted history of the place. At the start of the 13th century, this site was home to a timber, knot and baby castle. This would be quite a basic structure, a timber hall with just a few outbuildings.
But in 1271, during the reign of King Edward I, the design was taken up a notch. Permission was granted to strengthen the house at Tilda with a wall of stone and lime, and to crenellate it in a narrow castle. So, a gatehouse was built to replace the original wall.
And it was from this gatehouse, which still stands today, that more additions were made in the 14th century. Soon there were crenellated walls with towers on the corners. They added a moat and even a great hall.
It's hard to imagine, but in the 13th century, the exterior walls were being architecture with a mixture of powdered chalk and water, appealing decorated with bright gold colours. This wasn't just to make the castle look imposing, it was also to protect the sky. Across the years, all sorts of people have lived here at Hever Castle. Since the 13th century, it's passed through 37 different owners and 13 families. It was originally the home of William de Hever, who gave the castle its name. And in the 15th century, the Fines family lived here, the ancestors of the great explorer Sir Ranulph Fiennes.
Of course, the most famous of Hever's residents were the Boleyn family, who then spelled their name E-U-L-A-N. The castle was built by Geoffrey Boleyn in 1462, and it was his grandson, Thomas Boleyn, who lived here and raised his 3 children, Mary, Anne, and George. And it was Anne Boleyn, the middle child, who became Henry VIII's second wife.
Spoiler alert, the Boleyn's rise to power didn't last long. In fact, it was brutally short when Anne and George Boleyn were accused of adultery and incest and executed in 1536. Their father, Thomas Boleyn, was shown at court and died 2 years later.
With the Boleyns out of the picture, Hever Castle came into possession of King Henry, and in 1540 Henry gave it to his 4th wife after his love for marriage. This was Anne, also known as the Commander's Mare.
Since the Tudor period, Hever Castle commands several different families and gradually fell into decline. It may well have fallen into total disrepair had it not been snapped up by the richest man in America, William Woodville Astor.
Astor threw his immense fortune into refurbishing and reimagining Hever as a grand Tudor fortress, filling it with ornate oak paneling and magnificent Tudor portraits. He created a lavish family home which could indulge his passion for history and impress his VIP guests.
So what we're looking at today is a real hotbox of 700 years of tweaks and alteration. Even money has caused all sorts of problems in the past. They all have no gravity, and as they weren't used to drawing within the ether, they would sway over the banks and flood the castle's building.
Of course, Astor sorted all of that out of his renovations, and in 1906 he took out the crumbling brick bridge and reinstated this wooden drawbridge, which can still be raised, no doubt useful for any guests who turn up late.
This gatehouse is home to 2 of the oldest surviving court palaces in England, one of which can still be operated. And here in the castle courtyard, you can clearly see the difference between the 13th century gatehouse and the timber-framed Tudor additions. In Anne Boleyn's day, there would have been 4 doorways on each side rather than the 2 we see today. The east wing was where the servants worked and slept, and the west wing the private rooms of the Boleyn family. This is the 13th century gatehouse, the oldest house in France. This is where William de Hever would eat and slept and entertain his guests, and it's pretty luxurious. But even the castle, airport, the loop, which empties directly down into the moat. Look out below!
Sorry, it's a pretty gruesome collection in here. There are execution swords, pieces of armor, instruments of torture, and one of the strangest pieces are these scold's garlands. These were designed to be worn by outspoken women, a bit like myself, who were suspected to be witches, shrews, or scolds. Next we're heading to the inner hall. In the Boleyn's day, this was the kitchen where great feasts were prepared, and Thomas Boleyn even had high ceilings installed to help dissipate the smoke.
Of course, it doesn't look much like a kitchen these days, as much of this paneling and woodwork is installed by William Woodville Astor, who used this as his grand reception area.
Astor employed 748 men to refurbish the castle, and he was careful to preserve as much of the original structure as possible, with strict instructions to use historically authentic tools, materials, and techniques where possible.
But my favourite detail in this room is this portrait of Elizabeth of Ireland. There is the third man. It's a beautiful portrait of Elizabeth, but what's most interesting is this precious pearl in her hair.
This pearl is lavender green. It's believed to be one of the most symmetrical natural pearls ever found. It was also owned by Queen Mary I, and it stayed in the hands of royalty, Bollywood royalty that is, when Richard Burton bought it for Elizabeth Taylor.
And the pearl actually enters to be the castle when Elizabeth Taylor bought it, as filling the king in 1869 and the Thousand Days. Isn't that neat?
The other bit of beauty to look for in this room is this gilt bronze clock on the mantelpiece. This is a replica of what Henry VIII gave Anne Boleyn on the morning of their marriage in 1532.
The movie scholars talk all about the significance of this representing the time running time or time running out. For me, it's very simple. Just hours before wedding, Henry gave Anne a clock. And I think he's saying, please don't be late. Who can blame him? It was quite expensive.
The next stop on our tour is the drawing room. Originally used in Tudor time as domestic offices, this had a new lease of life in 1905. For William Randolph Astor kitted it out with this extravagant Elizabethan-style carving made from oak and holly.
This is the room Astor would show us many of his famous friends. We know that Queen Elizabeth II, Winston Churchill, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle were among his guests. You can picture the scene in here. Astor here with all his pals, who dukes, who earls, who drinking champagne, gin and tonic perhaps, and all they can do is lots of hearty jokes. A whale of a time, in fact.
They were entertained lavishly, and I'm sure they were impressed by Astor's little surprise behind this door, who transformed the medieval turret into a very own drink cupboard. After a few bottles of champagne, Astor brought his guests into the dining room. In Tudor times, this was the great hall, initially opened right up to the roof rafters. The Boleyns would have dined in this room, and it was here that they entertained Henry VIII and his retinue.
My favourite thing in this room is this impressive gilt lock. This belongs to Henry VIII. The king was so paranoid about assassination, he almost tried with a locksmith, and it was this lock that was fitted to his bedroom here on stage, and then removed when the royal party moved on. If there's one lesson we must take away from a visit to Tudor Castle, it's that you must never go up the stairs, for some of these steps, like this one, are different depths.
This wasn't because it was poorly designed or horribly built. This was, like in many medieval castles, an ingenious safety feature.
The idea was that if you lived here, there would be no much steps or openings, but for invaders, they would be thrown out, trip up, and rip the defenders of history advantage.
The next stop on the tour is my favourite room in the whole castle, Anne Boleyn's bedroom.
Anne Boleyn was probably born in 1501. She spent her childhood here at Tudor Castle, and the historians think that this was probably her bedroom.
It seems that Anne was fond of Eva. Even when she was a young woman and courted Henry VIII, Anne would offer return him. In fact, 7 of the King's love letters were sent to Anne while she was staying at Eva in 1528.
And here she is, wearing her famous blue pendant. She has a daring French-style hood revealing her dark hair. As a young woman, Anne was considered to be intelligent and witty, if not traditionally beautiful. The Venetian ambassador described her as not one of the handsomest women in the world. She was of middling stature, with a swarthy complexion, long neck, wide mouth, bosom, northwest ways, and in fact has nothing but the king's blood appetite, and her eyes, which are black and beautiful.
Some of Anne's most personal possessions are displayed here at Tudor Castle. In this room, you can see 2 beautifully illuminated prayers, which were signed as annotated by Anne herself.
These kind of personal prayers were popular in England from the 13th century until the Reformation. They earned the name Book of Hours dates from the short services to the Virgin Mary, which were read at 8 fixed hours during the day, including Matins and Vespers.
It's incredible to imagine Anne Boleyn walking these corridors. And of course, Henry would have visited on several occasions as they were courting. As Henry would have been given the grandest rooms available, you probably stayed in this room when you came to visit.
So, after being lavishly fed and watered by the Boleyn family, with a great feast of pies, game, roasted meat, custards and jellies, King Henry would have probably climbed into this bed and snuggled up to sleep, perhaps dreaming of Anne Boleyn or Gloria France, or probably snoring quite a lot, I imagine. This bed dates from 1540, but it's a tester bed. The term derives from the Latin word testa, meaning head, because these beds are made of very solid wooden canopies suspended above it. Cozy. Yeah, I do love the insect.